So once more, we're at the end of another season, one which has had both ups and downs. Across 5 serials we've seen the return of the Daleks, the return of the Ice Warriors, and the continued expansion on the Doctor's place as an agent of the Time Lords. But at the same time, the season also lessened the use of UNIT, meaning there's plenty going on in these serials, so let's get into them. The season opened with Day of the Daleks, which saw the monsters return after a 5-year absence. The serial itself isn't anything special, with the Daleks being a very tacked-on addition to what could have been a great story without them. The Curse of Peladon was a breath of fresh air, unlike anything the show has really given us in a while, and taking place entirely off of Earth for the first time in a few years. The setting and characters are all strong, with the twist with the Ice Warriors being a highlight. The Sea Devils follow that up with it being a very mid-serial, which suffered from the problems of the previous season. The Master was an unneeded element, which left the titular Sea Devils being an afterthought in their own story. The Mutants was a surprise to me, as I enjoyed it far more than I was expecting. While the topic it was commenting on has been done before in the show, the idea was strong, and was used with a cast which elevated the idea through their performances. Its ending was its weakest aspect, but it was overall stronger than I was expecting. The season ended on a weak note with a Time Monster, a serial which is just bemusing. It's a terrible story which has many bad decisions made throughout, which brings down a potentially interesting idea. This season ranking is perhaps the most obvious so far. In last place, the Time Monster, then it's the Sea Devils, then we have the Mutants, Day of the Daleks, and in first place is the Curse of Peladon. I will admit though that the Mutants and Day of the Daleks are probably quite tied. On the characters, this season really lessened the prominence of most of the characters from last season, with the UNIT characters and the Master only appearing in 2 serials each, with UNIT playing a small part in both those stories. Starting with Yates, he's barely in the season. He has a small presence in Day of the Daleks, but then he's barely in Time Monster, to the point where it feels odd they bothered to include him. I have nothing to say about him in this season because of this, and it's so strange how downgraded his role became so fast. Benton gets it somewhat better as he's more prominent in the Time Monster, but even so he does suffer from the same issue, with his presence being heavily downgraded. Time Monster serves him better in terms of screen time, but the content doesn't do much in his favour, although his confrontation with the Master is a highlight, and his great humour still makes him stand out and feel strong. The Brigadier is the most used and doesn't feel as hampered as the other 2, but it's clear that the limited screen time for UNIT hurt all of them. The structure of Day of the Daleks keeps him in the background of the majority of it, and even Time Monster doesn't give him much to do. When he's on screen he feels strong as to be expected, but there's very little of him to talk about. The main 2 on the other hand fared much better, with Jo especially feeling very strong. Throughout the season she has many moments where she ends up showing her growth from the previous season, with far less screaming and more of her going off by herself to do stuff. While there are occasions where she feels a bit nothing, she is almost always shown to be more competent than she previously was. This is a real sense of growth that she's undergone, while at the same time still showing her as flawed, which shows more room for her to grow. Having only one companion and the lack of UNIT really lets her shine where she and others couldn't before. The Doctor likewise is very strong in this season. Despite the varying scripts, he is constantly competent and gets many chances to show off both his intelligence and technological skills. While there are missed opportunities, notably in the Sea Devils, he usually gets a chance to show off, which makes this incarnation distinctive. While there aren't any new sides of him that are shown off, the sides which are there are all used to some extent or another. There is an increase in the Doctor's fighting abilities, notably with his match in the Curse of Peladon, alongside other smaller battles. This fighting side definitely separates him from his predecessors, while also allowing him to maintain the same principles. So this season was a rocky one. While it did have a classic in Curse of Peladon and saw the return of both the Ice Warriors and Daleks, there were many serials which weren't all that strong. There is also a greater sense of the show stepping away from the Earth and UNIT format which it has been using for the past 2 seasons, with them not appearing in 3 serials, and even in the ones they do appear in, the serials only feature them for half of their runtime. This general decrease in their presence really hurts the characters, although does allow for more opportunities with the stories. This change-up also means that this season doesn't feel the same as the previous one, with the entire feeling of it being very different. Whether or not it's stronger than the previous season is hard to say, because while it does lack the Master problem, the lows feel lower than the previous season, and the highs not as high. There are definitely reasons to prefer this season to the previous one, but at the same time I'm quite mixed on how I feel about it, as there is a real sense of there being 2 different ideas going on in the background, with all that coming from the Doctor's new limited freedom. At least this season doesn't really cause problems with what's exactly wrong with the TARDIS and changing things in the next serial.